She's had a very, very busy day, and I didn't have the guts to tell her outside. I met her and I said, "Hey, welcome to Rotary today." She goes, "This is going to be the least stressful thing I've done all day." And I said, "You have not met our group." But she has had a very busy day and has a busy day. So thank you very much for being here. She has served in state government for over a decade. She started as a budget analyst, right? And now leads, did I see over 550 employees? That's still quite a deal. 500 employees as executive director of the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission. Thank you so much for being here. And please help me welcome Shelley Zumwalt here today. We're going to learn a lot.
So it was Chris that invited me, correct? Correct. And so when we were following up saying, what would you guys like for us to talk about? He said, well, I saw you on Flashpoint, so whatever you talked about there would be great. Well, I did Flashpoint, I believe it was November or December. And as everyone here probably knows, legislative session, much different than any other part of the year. So probably what was relevant back in November or December, or really even January, has completely changed at this point, and will probably change again by the time the end of May comes. So I wrote down a couple of notes, but I wanted to give you guys a good amount of time to ask questions, because I may go in a direction that you're like, that's not really, we don't really care about that. And that's totally fine, because OESC covers so many different things. I think many people came to know us in the pandemic as unemployment. Totally fine. That is what we needed to be doing during the pandemic, is making sure that people, and there, I wonder if there's a person in here who wasn't 6 degrees from someone who was impacted. It really did span so many people and so many different economic groups, so many different professions. But now we've moved on towards basically trying to figure out, how do we transform the workforce in the state? We're in a really unique position. Oklahoma, by and far, unlike the rest of the nation, has people that are unemployed, but, and many of you that are business owners aren't going to be surprised by this at all, we have 2 jobs for every person that is not employed right now. Yeah, we have a workforce shortage. I did a little bit of research. I shouldn't say I did. Someone on my team, one of those 500 people, gave me a couple of different facts that I thought might be interesting about Payne County and Stillwater proper. Right now, you guys have a slightly lower unemployment rate than the rest of the state, which is awesome, because we've got a really low unemployment rate in the state. So what you're doing is going well. Payne County is at 2.9, and statewide, the unadjusted rate, well, the unadjusted rate's actually 2.7. So I'm wondering, right now, unemployment rate in Stillwater is at 2.5. State is actually 2.6. And when you're looking at the unadjusted rate, usually that's a little bit higher than the rest, and that's at 3.1. Unadjusted rates and non-adjusted rates, we could probably take that rabbit hole really far, but I'm just going to stay there, and we're going to end on unemployment rate here is slightly lower than the rest of the state. Additionally, you guys have more combined leisure and hospitality retail sectors than the rest of the state. And many of your jobs are coming from that sector, many more than actually the average in the rest of the state. This probably isn't a surprise, but I think it's interesting, because that's actually the sector that's been most impacted by the pandemic and hasn't come back to the rate that we need it to make sure that we get much lower unemployment. So what you're doing is good, but there's still room for growth there. And I think it's interesting, because when we're looking at how do we really maximize this opportunity as a state, how many of you guys have lived in Oklahoma your whole life? All right, that's actually good, because it sounds like we have a lot of transplants, because that's what we have to do at this point. We have to recruit people to Oklahoma. And if you've lived in Oklahoma your whole life, now is your time to shine, because we have an opportunity in this state right now to recruit people to our state because of the things that we once thought were disadvantages. Think about it. The pandemic broke everything, but what it did for Oklahoma is made people reevaluate what they want out of their life and their jobs. People in cities, they're thinking about, do I want to live in a city with a million other neighbors? Do I want my job to be my entire life? Do I want the fast-paced life that I've had? Because they got a break from it. They got a chance to think about it. Do I want a 3-hour commute in LA? Do I want to live in an apartment building, or do I want to live 15 miles outside of a city but not have a neighbor for as far as I can see? And many people are choosing those things now because they got a chance to reevaluate what was really possible. And here we are, Oklahoma. We have so many of those things. We can, if you're a business and you're looking to Dallas and it's too expensive, or the real estate that's available isn't quite right, just go north. Oklahoma, you can pick your choice. We're ready for you. We only have 1, maybe 2 skyscrapers in Oklahoma City. That's actually an advantage. And I think we've had some confidence issues with that previously. We thought maybe we weren't big time contenders with Chicago, Dallas, Austin. I could go on, but we really are in this new world. And that to me is the most exciting thing I'm going to say to you today, is that we really are the state that has the most opportunity in this new world that we find ourselves in. And so how do we build the workforce that we need? And I'm going to say this to you, but I say this in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. The growth rate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa doesn't have a lot of room. The growth rate in our rural areas and our smaller towns is almost infinite. And so we have to figure out a way that we bring all that together. We can't just pitch Oklahoma City and Tulsa to all of these companies. And when I'm looking at some of the facts that I got was for Stillwater, I was like, you guys are a lot more than a college town. I'm from Norman, so I get that a lot. And there's probably 0 similarities there, right? I'm just kidding. Yes. But I was thinking about that in terms of the hospitality sector, looking at that data, and I was like, wow, all the other data I'm looking at should say that is not growing at the rate that it is according to what we're looking at. And so what does that mean for Stillwater? It means the students you're graduating are staying here in that sector, which is interesting to me because it's not one of our 2 major cities. The matriculation from that degree field in general, I'm saying in general, is usually to the metro areas in any state that you're looking at, is the hospitality sector. Recent graduates matriculate to populations that are denser with more opportunity. That makes sense, but that's not what's going on here. And so I think that it's every time we see any data anomalies, for me, it's really easy to lose days of my life trying to figure it out. I don't have the answer to it, but I think it's really interesting because there's something going on there that wasn't going on before. The number actually has gone up at a rate since the pandemic that it isn't anywhere else in the state. Norman, for an example, that's not happening. A lot of their graduates go to Oklahoma City, but that being said, they don't have the same program that's here in Stillwater. The other thing that we need to do, besides recruit people here, tell businesses that we're open for business, we also need to partner with our higher ed institutions. There's actually some of that going on. Our Department of Public Service actually has a program with OSU where they pay a portion of tuition for students that want to go into the trades that are covered by DPS. And I say trades, but that's not accurate. There's so many different positions available, but I think we need to get a little bit more heavily invested in that as a state, and not just for public-public partnership, but we need to make sure that the people and the students that are graduating from our small to medium towns have somewhere to go. And we need to make sure that that pipeline is ready. Because even if we recruited 50% of the workers we're going to need in the next 10 years, if we don't keep the students that are graduating in our major and regional universities, then we won't become what we need to be to really maximize this opportunity. So I say that to you to hopefully be a little bit encouraging in that I look at a lot of data right now because nothing's really there's seasonal trends, there's things like that, but it's a really interesting time to be figuring out what the next steps are for our state, for our cities, for government in general, to really make sure that the workforce we're building has the critical occupations covered, but also the emerging occupations covered. If we have a telework agreement for a tech position with someone in California, that doesn't work for us because our cost of living is 20% higher than ours. The telework agreement out of the state doesn't work. So we've got to get that data scientist. You're smiling. You in tech, you know this. My husband is a software engineer, and I hear about this all the time. But we need to get that person to move here, and they can. And all the things I just told you about are reasons why they want to. So that's the exciting part of my job, that while we are still lowering unemployment, providing those services, we're thinking about how can we emerge as the comeback capital. We are number 3 in the nation for our economic recovery since the pandemic. Think about that. That's amazing. We are doing the right things, but there's still a lot of work we have to do. And the development and the intention and the funding put towards making sure that this opportunity is maximized is really important right now. But from a platform of how do we do this 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, so that the workforce we build can attract the companies can have that workforce. We can make sure that when we're showing people Oklahoma, that the opportunities that we thought were not really opportunities before the pandemic are exactly what they're looking for. So with that, I can take some questions. I can talk about other things. You guys tell me. I'm just happy to not be tap dancing in front of the legislature right now. So yes. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And if I told you the exact number right now, I'm sure I'd really impress you, but I can give you some general numbers. Okay. The biggest issue that Oklahoma has to, and this is part of what I was talking about workforce, but you're actually going to have me touch on a point I should have anyway. So while we have really low unemployment in the state, we've been ranked anywhere from 3 to 5 in the past, since October of last year. Our workforce participation rate is lower, and it's about 2 points lower than the national average. Now, the things that make our unemployment rate low are also the things that make our workforce participation rate not as high as it needs to be. And a big factor of that has to do with childcare and the availability. Rural areas, because we have a lot of them, in general, our unemployment rate's low. But in the situation we're talking about now, those obstacles become greater in a situation like this, because the infrastructure that was built up to provide that support has collapsed, and we need to rebuild it. So we've lost roughly, we're at, I think, 62% workforce participation. The national average is between 65.5 and 67. So we've got room to grow there. But roughly, we lost 1.5 to 2% of the workforce in the state. The interesting thing, though, is we have more people participating in the workforce than ever before, over 1.8 million. So those, I think it was 17,000 people that moved to the state over the past year and a half, they're predominantly working. They're not moving here for retirement. They're not moving here for other reasons. So that is kind of where I think the solution lies. What are these people doing? What careers are they seeking? And how can we provide that infrastructure? As a government, can we subsidize childcare until we can find stable childcare services? These are actually all the questions I talk about all day, is how do we solve this problem? And I'm happy to tell you that it is being discussed at the very highest levels. The childcare thing, though, is a national issue. And not to say that it's not, sometimes when people say that, it's like dismissively. I don't say that at all, because I was actually a single mom for 8 years. And so that, when I think about the challenges families have and single moms have post-pandemic, I feel a ton of empathy, because I don't know what I would have done in that situation. But that being said, it's not an easy one to just stand up a daycare or some other services. So we're looking at different school districts. We're looking at other areas, libraries per se. Just what is the need? Is it all daycare? Is it after school, before school? And trying to do prescriptive solutions and do pilot programs to try to figure out what the magic sauce is in that equation, knowing that hopefully, and I say hopefully because as a government official, I never would have say, we're going to do that for sure, knowing that there's a lot of other factors that go into that decision. But knowing that we need to make sure that we are bringing the community into that too, because the last thing you want is for the government to say, here's a solution, do it. We need to partner with some of the people in the community that haven't had the capital to invest back into their business. How do we make sure that if there is a child care provider in that area, that they may not have the ability to start up with 100 kids like they used to, or to pay their rent for the first 6 months. This isn't I do want to say this. It's not about giving out money at this point. It's about figuring out a workable solution so that we can get those people, those 2%, 1.5%, 2% of people, and that are predominantly women, back into the workforce so that we can solve this problem of the workforce participation rate. I hope that was a very long answer to your question. Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned people coming to the state. So do you have ideas how many people are coming in versus how many left?
We've actually by far had more people coming in than leaving, and they're from the coast. We've got right around, it's not necessarily New York City, although proudly say my brother and his wife were part of that matriculation. A lot of it is California. It is Oregon, it's Washington, it's a little bit of the left coast. And so when I'm saying the things about Oklahoma that we may not have seen as assets pre-pandemic, those are the exact reasons why people are moving here. We have the second lowest cost of living in the nation. That's really attracting people. We have wide open spaces. Our houses are affordable, especially when you're paying $2 million for, a 4-bedroom house. So I think that the reevaluation is working in our favor, but I think that if we sit back and let it happen, we're not really going to be able to get to that next step of what we could be.
Okay, one more, just
Yeah, sure.
feedback for you, not a question.
Yeah.
My wife's a pediatrician here in town.
Mm-hmm.
We have a great healthcare system here, but we have minimal specialty for pediatrics. All the specialists are in Oklahoma City or Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a mother needs to get a kid to a specialist, that means a day off work or daycare or something or transportation. And she has so many patients that can't afford to take a day off work and they're missing their specialist appointments. Rural healthcare is primary care is part of it. But boy, the issue of specialty care for pediatrics is horrible in the state. Food for thought.
Noted. And in the long path that I took to get to where I am today, I actually worked in Medicaid for a brief moment, the state Medicaid agency. We're glad for punishment. But that was an interest. I mean, it was an issue. This was pre-pandemic, it was an issue then. I appreciate you saying that because I'm going to take it and I don't know if I can solve that, but I think that the effort towards the, especially the nurses right now, that is a critical occupation. And we're seeing universities step up and say, we will make sure that we graduate X amount of nurses. That's not something we've seen before. So I will say that in a way to try to be positive in that is very much something that is being looked at as, by government is how do we staff these critical occupations and how do we partner with our institutions to do so?
I
Sorry.
I may have missed your answer. I'm pretty slow at understanding sometimes.
Oh, you didn't
but,
miss it. You're about ready to stab me in the heart, aren't you?
I hear you saying unemployment in Oklahoma is low, and I hear you all talking about it. But why, or is there a reason why almost every business that I go to around here, it says I'm hiring, I need help. So if unemployment is low, why is everybody looking for more help?
So I get that question all the time, but think about it. I mean, a function of low unemployment is that there's less people to fill jobs. So when you're seeing that, it's because we have low unemployment, i.e., there is not that many people that are able to be employed. What you're seeing is actually a function of low unemployment. That's why I'm saying we need to recruit people into the state. Right now, the workforce participation rate is not where it needs to be. If we had 2% more of that, I promise you there would be less for higher signs, but the unemployment rate would stay the same.
I don't mean to argue with you, but I'm
Yeah,
saying
that's fine.
if Oklahoma, if we're not losing population and we have more population coming in and they all want to work, and you were saying there's not enough people to work, what's happening to those people that didn't leave?
They're not working. They're not working.
So they're getting free stimulus payment.
Well, just because someone's unemployed doesn't, okay, I'm going to answer that because you're going to start a rumor. Federal unemployment ended in June of 2021, and we ended it earlier than other states. So there is no more free money going on. Also, people that are unemployed aren't necessarily receiving unemployed payments. We only have anywhere from 10 to 15,000 people at the most every week filing for unemployment, which is extremely reduced from the 150,000, the 250,000 we had during the pandemic. And I tell you that not to like shut down what you said. Please know that. It's more that I get that question every day, like, well, when are we shutting off the federal money? And I'm like, oh man, I got sued 8 different ways for doing that. Like we did it. And that's why we're in the position we are today. And so the question about why are we not able to get certain populations back to work has to do with the collapse of infrastructure in certain areas, i.e. mostly childcare. And so the people that you're looking for, well, I should add to that too. There's another situation that I'm hoping will be rectified. The for hire signs, especially for jobs that are hourly or that are not full-time, a lot of those have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Their employees have moved to dispensaries and farms for the medical marijuana industry. Because right now we don't have those people showing up anywhere. And so that's kind of one of those things too, that when you're looking at who are these people, where are they going, why are those jobs? We have a group of people that aren't really showing up in the data that I'm looking at because we haven't figured out a way that, we have got that to be something that the state is regulating in a fashion that shows payroll taxes, that they're paying into the UI trust, all of those things. And so specifically when we're looking at jobs in general that have those for hire signs, it is a function of low unemployment, but it's also that we have this industry that we're looking to regulate in a way that we can answer that question with data. But up until this point, we haven't had it. I hope that's helpful.
We talk about jobs available, but what kind of jobs are they? What kind of qualifications are needed for these jobs? Are they high-paying jobs? Are they minimum wage jobs? What kind of jobs are available across the spectrum?
So you're talking about
how does that match with the capabilities of the available workforce?
This is a great question. It doesn't. Right now, when we're looking at, once we can get numbers on how many people we need basically in the hourly or lower wage jobs, I think that's not actually going to be our main concern right now. I think that we will have people that will matriculate to those jobs. We will see businesses, I'm an employer, so I have to fight for these jobs too. And I've had to raise wages. I have had to do different things to try to keep employees, from leaving, but also hire new ones. So I understand that that's a competition we all are doing right now. But there's a lot of movement towards aerospace jobs. The energy sector, we're not just talking about oil and gas. We're talking about hydrogen. We're talking about wind. We are we have the second most production in the nation for alternative energy. That's largely due to wind, but we have emerging energy sectors that we need employees for. There are a lot of jobs that are very well paying careers that we're not graduating enough people that are staying in the state. And so when I'm talking about the pipeline is keeping people here. It is making sure that we've made those partnerships that say, I'm going to pay for half of your tuition if I can employ you after you graduate, or 20% of your time as a senior in college is spent working at my business. And those are the type of things I think we have to be more intentional about as a state so that we can populate, Stillwater, Norman, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, but also our rural areas, because there are a lot of jobs in the energy sector and they're the highest paying jobs in those areas. And so it really is, it's an interesting problem to have, because we got to find those people and we got to tell them all about Oklahoma and why they have to move here. And I guess I should say, and we've got to be more intentional about our graduates and incentivizing different programs. The programs we're talking about at universities are more expensive, and that's a problem too. It's easier to graduate a philosophy degree, someone with a philosophy degree, than it is an engineering or nursing degree. It's cheaper. So how do we change that ratio? That's what we've got to do. And we've got to partner with universities to do it. They're businesses as well. I mean, that's a business decision. And I hope that answers your question a little bit. It's not just engineering though, it's other sectors as well.
No, your answer is exactly what
Okay.
I thought it would be. And just to add another data point to that, here in Stillwater, we have what I think is the best research university in the state. Of course, I'm biased.
That's
I
fair.
spent all my career at OSU. But seriously, I think it is the best. And yet, we in Stillwater do not take advantage of that. Some years ago, I sat in a focus group in Stillwater, consisting of university and city people, talking about what the future of Stillwater should be. And there was a debate about whether we see ourselves as an innovative place where young entrepreneurs will come in, connect with the university, grow new R&D companies, new businesses, and for which I was saying, yeah. The other argument was saying, no, we should stay exactly where we are. We want nice, peaceful, quiet Stillwater. We want to grow a retirement community. The winner in that debate was Stillwater should be a retirement community. Yeah, now this was about this was about 7 or 8 years ago. So things have changed, but when you look at the image of Stillwater, I still see more of the retirement community image than I do of the high-tech driven young entrepreneurs. We've got to do a big change.
I totally agree. I mean, like you and I would get along famously. And I would say, because I've run out of time, I think that, and I say this biasly because I was fortunate enough to work with Dr. Casey Schramm during the pandemic. And I think the efforts of her and Dr. Elizabeth Pollard, who is our cabinet secretary for science and innovation, I think that we're putting more efforts towards that. And, OSU, the medical school in Tulsa, is unbelievable. I think that while efforts probably aren't as radical as they could be, in my mind and from my perspective, where, Oklahoma City at the Capitol, it has changed dramatically. But I agree with you. I mean, that's a big decision. And I think that it's funny you said that. On the way here, I pulled over to get gas and I made a note to myself that says, what's the ROI on R&D versus a proactive job placement for a university? I don't know the answer to that, but I wanted to make sure I looked at it because I wonder about that. I think there's a balance, and research and development is very, very important, but also we export a lot of our R&D graduates and we need them to stay here. And so I think that there's a lot of questions that to me are exciting to answer in that space, but know that like in the end of the day, I'm not just answering questions, I'm recruiting workforce. So I think that if I were you, yes, those are the questions that are being asked. And if I come back and talk to you a year from now, then I've probably been pretty successful at answering them because they let me stay. And so I'm hopeful that you and I will meet at some other point and you'll say, I think you did it. I think you got the people where you needed them, but it's going to be ongoing for a long time. This is not a 1-year job or 2-year job. This is a 10-year project. And I will leave you with this. My daughter, she is 15. Sorry, I don't even know why I got choked up just then. She's in boarding school. And that's weird. I'm just going to say that because there's no one else that I say that in Oklahoma. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's normal. But she is a dancer. She's very talented, and I'm biased. But she goes to a school in Michigan. And she's looking to go to crazy schools that I never went to. And I'd love to take credit for all of her accomplishments, but she's very driven. And she's going this summer to Columbia for a summer program for high school students. And I know she likely will not go to school here. My job directly results in my daughter wanting to come back here after she graduates. And if I'm successful, she will. So if there's any person that you want in government to be working towards a goal that you agree with, it's someone that has skin in the game. And I absolutely do. So with that, if I can ever help you guys, my door's open. And thank you for letting me speak to you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I'm sure that everyone in